The search zone for a man and his 3 children will go there live. The lines snaking around the road, not for a test or a vaccine, but a food package, and demand is soaring. Has Delta benched the government's plans to reopen New Zealand to the world? And the man turning your kids' masterpieces into something even better to stick on the fridge. Don't forget, you can catch us on Facebook, Freeview and Sky Channel 83.
Ahi Māori e RNZ News at 5, ko Sarah Thompson tōko ingoa. The family of a King Country man and his 3 young children who've been missing since Saturday fear they may have been swept out to sea. Surf lifesavers are now in the water on the 3rd day of the search along the King Country west coast for Thomas Phillips and his 3 children. Andrew McRae reports.
In a statement today, the family say there was no noticeable change in Tom's behaviour before he disappeared. They say that because his vehicle was found empty on Kiritihiri Beach, they're understandably very anxious and fearful for the safety of him and the children. They say it's possible all 4 were swept into the sea as conditions were particularly wild over the weekend. The family are hoping, however, that they went camping and are safe somewhere.
A Marokopa resident says the coast being searched is rugged with potentially treacherous seas. Stan Vickery, who is 91, told Radio New Zealand he has lived in the area all his life.
She's rugged along the coast down here. When she gets rough, she gets rough. It was very rough when they went to the beach.
Stan Vickery says there is some speculation Tom Phillips, who he says is a hard case, went bush with the 3 children. MIQ bookings are set to resume next week under a new system. The pressure on MIQ capacity at the border has eased to the point that the government can resume making rooms available. 3,000 will be available from 8 o'clock on Monday morning and about 4,000 altogether each fortnight until Christmas. COVID-19 Response Minister Chris Hipkins says people will be put in a queue and won't have to keep refreshing.
The whole system is designed to improve the experience for those using the managed isolation allocation system and to level the playing field. But I do want to stress again, it isn't a silver bullet, and we are fully expecting that there will be more demand for the rooms than there are rooms available.
Chris Hipkins says Monday's voucher release will not include red flights from Australia. 26,000 people were vaccinated against COVID-19 in Auckland yesterday, a day after the Prime Minister called for as many people as possible to come forward this week. The number puts the city on track to equal its second highest week of vaccination, about 180,000, but it's still well short of the 31,000 it has capacity to do every day. The number of people tested for the virus was also strong yesterday, more than 10,000. Health authorities want to see at least 7,000 a day to help them feel confident the virus is not hiding in Auckland as the city heads towards level 3. Just over 1,000 people have been turned away while trying to cross Auckland's boundary checkpoints in the last 2 weeks. The police say they have issued fines to offenders, such as a man yesterday who tried to cross with a boat, claiming he was transporting goods. 75 people have been charged with breaking the lockdown restrictions, and the police have received more than 8,000 reports of breaches. However, they say most people are complying with the rules. The plane maker Boeing expects it will take another 2.5 years for the aviation industry to return to pre-pandemic levels of activity. It says long-haul international routes have been hit the hardest. This report from the BBC's Jonathan Josephs.
The American manufacturer estimates that by 2024, numbers will be back to the pre-pandemic level of 4.5 billion passenger flights. It says the continued global economic recovery is a key reason, but that a coordinated approach to ease travel restrictions is also tremendously important. There is optimism for the long term too. Its 20-year forecast increases the amount of new commercial planes it says the world needs to more than 43,600. That will be driven in part by airlines wanting more efficient planes to help tackle climate change.
Moving now into sports news, All Blacks halfback Aaron Smith says the silver lining with missing the rugby championship is that it'll give him the chance to refresh his body and mind. Smith won't be joining the All Blacks in Australia because of difficulties with securing an MIQ spot to return in time for the birth of his second child. He's now also likely to miss the All Blacks end-of-year tour unless the baby arrives early.
The training and that's not always the hard one, but not having those knocks, test rugby knocks and back-to-back games away and weeks, it's just going to add to the end of my career, hopefully.
Aaron Smith will now play for Manawatu in the provincial competition. The Silver Ferns are still waiting to learn if 4 players, including captain Gina Crampton, will get exemptions to leave Auckland for next week's 3-test series against England in Christchurch. Crampton, Sulu Fitzpatrick, Peter Toeva and Grayson Wiki are in level 4 lockdown in Auckland. Netball New Zealand has sought exemptions from the Ministry of Health for them to travel south, but is still awaiting a response. The squad will assemble in Christchurch tomorrow, while opponents England got out of quarantine last week and have been training together since then. The first test is on Monday. And finally, Australia's iconic Bathurst 1000 motor race has been rescheduled for December, with organisers hopeful fans will be able to attend. And that's the news.
A shout out for names for the new vaccine buses.
The bus over in Australia has been nicknamed Jabba the Bus. Can we do better than that?
I'm sure we can.
Someone else suggested an even better one, which was Crush the COVID.
Vaximus Prime.
That is excellent.
I don't know if I can say this one, the next one, in my accent. It might sound better in yours.
Shot, bro.
That's the one.
Double jab ute. I like double jab ute. What was the one about out in the country? Are we allowed to say that?
I don't know. I'm going to say it.
Say it.
Pricks and sticks.
Yeah.
Because it was about jabbing people in rural areas.
This is exactly right.
There we go.
This is exactly right. All Your Needle. Morning Report, weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
Te reo irirangi o Aotearoa, funded through New Zealand On Air. Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Rāpare Thursday. Northland, Auckland, Waikato and Coromandel, occasional rain or showers, persistent and heavy at times tomorrow, with thunderstorms from the afternoon. Waitomo to Manawatu, including Bay of Plenty and the Central High Country, also Gisborne. Periods of rain, heavy for a time tomorrow. Southeasterly gales in Taranaki tomorrow. Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, scattered rain becoming widespread and heavy tomorrow. Horowhenua, Kapiti and Wellington, a few showers today, rain tomorrow and southeasterlies rising to gale in exposed places. Nelson, Buller, Westland and Fiordland, fine, apart from a few showers about southern and eastern Fiordland tomorrow. Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago and Southland, fine today, but a few showers near the coast, cloud and showers spreading north tomorrow, and snow lowering to 600 metres inland. And for the Chatham Islands, fine spells and a few light showers. That concludes the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Rāpare Thursday. It's 7 minutes past 5.
Kia ora rā e hoa, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Stressed out, stranded and about to have their pensions cut off. An unknown number of Kiwi superannuitants risk having their pension payments suspended after getting stuck in Australia when the Trans-Tasman bubble burst and the freeze went on MIQ. People can only collect their normal super for up to 26 weeks out of the country, and at 30 weeks absence, they can be forced to pay back the previous 6 months of super. A number of retirees used the quarantine-free Aussie travel bubble or travelled across the ditch to reunite with families they hadn't seen in almost 2 years, meet new grandchildren, get out of the cold, or to help others in crisis. Now, their stories are different, but there's common themes. They feel unfairly treated, abandoned by the government, stressed out about their financial lifeline potentially being cut off, and worried about how and when they'll get home. This bubble, it appears, comes with a mighty big hangover. For many, whānau was the big draw card. That's why Donna and Alan headed to Oz in May.
We've got family over here, kids and grandkids that we haven't seen for probably 18 months. So we decided to come over and catch up with them and just have a little bit of a travel around and that. So since we've been here, of course, everything else has happened and we're in the position that we're in now. We have been doing our best to get back home, but the managed isolation are all full and they don't tie in for quite some time. So it's just not open.
So you're stuck, essentially.
So we're virtually stuck, that's correct, yes.
Alan says they couldn't even register for MIQ out of Australia, and then the freeze went on vouchers and now their pension. MSD warned the couple they were about to hit the limit for time out of the country, so they opted to put a hold on their super to avoid a super-sized debt.
They've suspended it for the time being, and when we get back they'll be in talks with us and go from there. But it's just so bloody crazy because we're entitled to that pension, and we've spent all these years paying taxes and that to get to the stage, and now they make you feel like you're a little bloody kid and like a prisoner.
Alan, have they told you that you're likely to have to pay the last 6 months of your pension back, in essence?
Yes, we have the email. We have the email from them.
That was a choice that both Alan and myself made, to have our pension frozen. We did not want to go back to New Zealand and incur a $15,000 debt between us. To have our pension paid, we would have to pay that back to the government. We look at our pension as not a gift from the government. It is money that we have worked for. We are entitled to our pension. I can't understand why they would want to claw it back.
That's Donna. They're sharing the phone. The government put on some flights to assist people coming back. Weren't you able to take advantage of those?
No, we weren't, because the last ones that came back were from Sydney, and all the borders over here are closed. When we came over, we had to sign a declaration with the Queensland government to say that we wouldn't go out of Queensland, which we were quite happy to do. And so we've been in Queensland the whole time. And so I can't see why we're both fully vaccinated, and I don't see why we can't get back on a green flight and maybe isolate in our own home.
How are you feeling about being stuck there?
The thing that really grates on my nerves at the moment is the fact that the government has made it completely unflexible for us. They have failed us as New Zealand citizens. We are entitled to come home just like anybody else around the world is. We've done the right thing. We've both been fully vaccinated. What else can we do?
Queensland's not looking so sunny for Pamela either. Hers was never a run-of-the-mill holiday.
Our son had a bowel cancer diagnosis. His wife has chronic fatigue, and they have 3 little children, 2, 6 and 9. They needed help to move house.
So pretty stressful for her and her 76-year-old husband. And now as the days tick up, the clock ticks down on her pension payments.
I think they should show some of Jacinda's kindness and continue to pay the pension until we can get back.
How are you feeling about your situation? Is it stressful for you and your husband?
It is. It's not a nice feeling to know you cannot go home and you have no idea when you can go home, and your pension is going to be stopped and you're going to have to repay 6 months of the pension.
How do you feel you're being treated, Pamela?
Unfairly. No kindness coming our way.
The freeze is coming off MIQ vouchers next week, but none of them will be for people coming from across the ditch. Helen is in Australia's ground zero for COVID, Sydney. Her daughter and only grandchildren live there. She's got until November until her pension's pulled. When the government offered up Mercy flights in MIQ spots, she says people were asked to make way for others who had more urgent needs.
We were sent a message that said some people have to return urgently, and that if you don't have to return urgently, if you can wait, there will be further flights. We will get you home. That is what was said in the message. So I wasn't one of those ones who needed to get home urgently. I stood aside, and then I have found that there aren't further flights and they're not going to get us home. And it was a gut-wrenching moment when I realised that.
How do you think you're being treated by the government?
Absolutely ignored. We haven't had one message. I did have a message from Jacinda sent out to all New Zealanders, finishing up Be Kind to Each Other. And I thought, well, that would be nice. We are still part of the team of 5 million. We're off field at the moment, but we're still part of the team. We're all being affected by this pandemic. I'm still a taxpayer. I don't want to be here, but I have no choice.
Sally bounced over on the bubble too to see family and friends.
We were thrilled and looking forward to having a bit of a trip away. So, yeah, we were thrilled to be coming over.
It was pretty exciting until it wasn't. When the call went out to get home, Sally says she and her husband were out back of the blocks.
We were all up in the Northern Territory at Daily Waters. So for us to drive the over 3,000 Ks, we're all in our 70s, drive the 3,000 Ks back to Brisbane and then have the pre-departure test 3 days prior, once we got here, we wouldn't have made it.
Are you keen to get home, Sally?
Yes, we are. We've got our place at home and we've got 2 more sons in New Zealand and grandchildren. So we're also financially, it's a worry. Surely they could have someone at the airport giving us one of those fast antigen tests when we get off the plane and happily go into isolation for, if they want us to, at home.
There's an exception to these pension rules, a way to preserve your payments. If your absence from the country is because of circumstances beyond your control that you couldn't have reasonably foreseen prior to departure. But a number of the pensioners Checkpoint's spoken to have had letters saying they don't meet the rules for an exception because their predicament was entirely foreseeable in a global pandemic. Back to Alan, who sums up the general feeling of those spoken to by Checkpoint.
Oh, I think it's utterly bloody ridiculous. How can you foresee something like that happening? I just think it's ludicrous.
So, no exemptions available for pensioners in this situation because of the pandemic and MSD's belief that the outcome was foreseeable. But in a statement, MSD says there is legislative provision which allows MSD to consider each case on the facts, as there may be other unforeseeable reasons a person may not be able to return. For example, there may have been a serious medical event that prevented their return. It is 16 minutes past 5. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Kia ora rawatu mo te whakarongo mai. E haere ake nei, coming up on the program, the COVID-19 Minister, Chris Hipkins, is with us live. Bad weather is hampering the search for a King Country man and his 3 children missing on the North Island's rugged west coast. 34-year-old Thomas Phillips and his children, Ember, Maverick and Jada, aged 5 to 8, were last seen at Marokopa on Saturday. The search began on Monday and the police remain committed to finding them. The extended family says they are very anxious and fearful. Andrew McRae reports.
Rain, blustery southerly wind and low cloud has prevented both the police helicopter and a Coast Guard aircraft getting into the air today. But it hasn't hampered many search and rescue personnel combing the shoreline and coastal hills for any sign of the thaw. The handful of residents at the tiny settlement of Kiritahiri have rallied around to support the searchers. Ngāti Pihi and Ngāti Kanawa Hapukuia, Nora Haupokia, says they're doing what they can to help.
And supporting the family as well as the community, the American community, and the people that are out on searching. Just supporting in the ways of maybe cups of teas and meals and things for the ones that are working on this side.
Thomas Phillips' Toyota Hilux was driven onto the remote beach, but Nora Hapokia says it's not clear when this happened. It was found on Sunday.
By the afternoon, the sea started to go around it, so they decided maybe they could get it and bring it off the beach, otherwise the sea would make a mess of it. So they brought it back up here, and from there it all steamed out on there for the police.
Ms. Hapokia says she knows Thomas Phillips' parents, but didn't know him well. She has grave fears for him and his children if they are out in the bush.
We're not very happy about it if that is what he's doing. To me, it's not fair on the children, it's not fair on the people that are going to put their resources out for the likes of the police and all those people that have come to do their search.
And how concerned are you now for their safety?
Well, very concerned, to the point that it's been those many days and there's children involved.
The hapu has placed a rahui on the coastline around Kiritahiri and Marokopa.
We're hoping we find them alive, and if we don't, and we still find them, so be it. That's all we can wish for.
Max Baxter is Mayor of Otorohanga District. He describes it as a huge mystery.
We hate to think of anything sinister still at this point, but as time goes on after from Saturday through till now, in somewhat inclement weather, and a young family, your concerns do rise for sure.
Have you heard any sort of reasons why they may have gone missing?
No, not at all. I mean, it's one of those horrible situations where there's always speculation out there, and I don't want to be drawn into any speculation. At this stage, as far as the family is concerned, it's still a total mystery.
He describes the area around Morokopa as rugged.
Certainly once you start heading out there, it's almost going back in time, and there's why it's so attractive to so many people, because you can escape from the likes of cell phone and coverage, which is part of our daily lives here in, I suppose, the metropolis of New Zealand.
The Phillips family has released a statement saying they're understandably very anxious and fearful for the safety of Tom and the children. They say it's possible all four were swept off the beach as the sea was particularly wild over the weekend. They are hopeful Tom has taken the children camping and are safe somewhere. The family says there was no noticeable change in Tom's behaviour. Police haven't held a media conference today, but in a statement say they're interested in hearing about the movements of Mr Phillips' 2004 silver grey Toyota Hilux prior to being found on the beach on Sunday. They say they remain focused and committed to finding Mr Phillips and his children and bringing them home, and they continue to work with and support their extended family.
It is 21 minutes past 5. Kia amo tonu mai. Thanks for listening. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. You may soon enter the lobby. The hottest ticket in town is about to be up for grabs again, with the government announcing an end to its pause on MIQ vouchers, well, for some at least. On Monday morning, those overseas trying to get home will be able to try to nab a place in MIQ through the new system, which the government says will make the system fairer. Instead of endless refreshing or enlisting a bot, people will be able to enter the virtual lobby and try their luck. There'll be about 4,000 rooms available each fortnight until Christmas. Ko taku manuheria nai ko Chris Hipkins, the COVID response minister. Tēnā koe e te minita.
Kia ora, Lisa.
None of those rooms that are being released are for people in Australia stuck there. So should they prepare to spend Christmas in Australia?
No, we will have further news for people in Australia within the next couple of days, and that'll include information about how long we think the suspension there might go on for, or when we're next going to review it. And we'll also have information about, red flights for those who need to come home. We have been bringing people back who have emergency reasons to come home. We've been working with the airlines to facilitate that, but we're aware that there are still Kiwis there who are waiting for some certainty around when they're going to be able to come back. But I do also just want to note there are some people who have said that they won't take emergency allocations for MIQ despite having been offered them, because they think that they would rather just wait and come back when it's quarantine free. That could be some time away.
Okay, so are you suggesting that you are going to ring fence some MIQ spots for people coming back from Australia in the next few days?
No, what we'll do, and we'll release more details of this, we have to make sure that there are flights available to match up with the release of rooms. And at the moment there aren't, because at the moment the airlines still have their green zone flight schedules, and they'll need to have red zone flights agreed before we can match those up with MIQ vouchers and the release of MIQ vouchers. But we're working with them on that, and of course we need to confirm a decision about the extension of the pause or the suspension of the Trans-Tasman bubble before all that work can happen.
So in terms of the pause on the bubble, are you still going to consider Australia as a whole, or will you move state by state?
At this point, we're still considering Australia as a whole.
So it's likely anyone coming back will still have to go through the MIQ system?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
And so what definitive hope can you give to these people? Because there are people who are desperate to get back and they're happy to go into MIQ, but as you say, the flights don't marry up. A lot of pensioners who are about to get their pensions chopped because they're not back in time. How much longer are they going to have to wait?
Look, we will have more news for them in the next couple of days.
But are you trying to get them back before the end of this month, before the end of next month? Give us a bit of an indication of time frame that you're working to get them back home.
Look, it'll depend on how many people want to actually come back. So we've got a sense of who's registered on safe travel, but there are a lot of Kiwis over there who aren't registered on safe travel. So until we've got some confirmed red zone flights and we see what the booking demand is like there, it's very difficult to tell.
So can you say that you will get anyone who wants to come back from Australia, returning Kiwis back here before Christmas?
No, I can't give them that reassurance, and we were pretty clear with people when we gave them forewarning of the suspension of the Trans-Tasman zone, with the exception of New South Wales, who I think are a special case because they didn't get the chance to come back quarantine-free before the travel bubble was suspended. But we were pretty clear with everybody else that if they took their chances and stayed in Australia, that's what they were doing.
Is it fair that some of these superannuitants are going to get their pensions cut off because they can't get back? Is that fair?
Look, that is something that I know the Minister of Social Development was looking in last time I spoke to her about that, which I haven't done in the last sort of 48 hours or so. So that really is a question for her. I know she's been looking at it. I can't make an announcement or any comment on that on her behalf.
So are you looking at options in order that they are not cut off from their super payments?
Like I said, I know the Minister of Social Development has been looking at the issue, but I can't make a comment on her behalf on that at this point.
So this lobby system, you're still expecting the demand to exceed supply. Do you got any estimates of by how much?
No, but one of the things the lobby system will do is we will know how many people join into the lobby before the booking process commences, and that will give us a bit of an indication of what we think the forward patterns of demand are going to be.
And can that lobby seriously handle, let's say, 10,000 people piling in there on Monday?
That's one of the reasons for the lobby. It means that you can have a lot of people in the lobby, and then they can be drawn into the booking process in a way that doesn't crash the system. These systems are used quite commonly by event organisers when they're releasing tickets for concerts and so on. So it's a tested and proven technology.
Are you sure that you can stop people using algorithms and bots? Is that a guaranteed?
The advice I've had is that this should eliminate the bots. The one thing that I can't guarantee, of course, is that people aren't getting other people to make bookings on their behalf. That would be very, very difficult to spot and to enforce a restriction on.
Yeah, so sort of on that note, if a family of 6 are going somewhere and they've all got passports that they're travelling on, they can all get in there, right, and all be bidding for vouchers as individuals for the group, so they have multiple chances.
The lobby ultimately does. I mean, the lobby will draw people at random out. The system will draw people at random out of the lobby. Obviously, if everyone in a group is in the lobby, it's not going to increase their chances by that much.
Should the Warriors be in the waiting room on Monday in that lobby?
Look, ultimately, we haven't made a decision on that yet.
So what does that mean? You're looking at alternative arrangements for them so that they don't have to obtain their own MIQ?
No, my advice to them would be go and join the lobby, absolutely.
Okay. So I just want to quickly ask you about school holidays, right? So are you going to change the holidays?
I haven't made a decision on that. I'm obviously getting some very strong representations, but I'm also getting advice from the Ministry of Education, and I can say that the underlying principle here will be what's best for kids' education, and so I'm getting quite a bit of advice and information on that, and we'll endeavour to make a decision pretty quickly. I understand people want to have some certainty around it.
But if you're not going to move them, you could tell us that now. So are you seriously considering moving them or altering them in some way at the very least?
I certainly haven't ruled it out, and I'm getting advice on the practicality of that, all of the different things to weigh up. Obviously, you'll see some strong resistance there from various parts of the community, not just teachers, but actually some businesses even have expressed some reservations about shifting the school holiday date. So, look, I'll consider all of that.
So, decision in the next 24 hours, Minister?
Certainly within the next couple of days, yeah.
Appreciate your time this evening. That is the COVID Response Minister, Chris Hipkins there. Homai o whakaro, love your feedback. Nō reira anei na kaupapa mō te hōtaka nei. A couple of things we're looking for here. What do you reckon about these pensioners who are stuck in Australia? Some of them have made multiple attempts to try and get out. None of the MOQ vouchers are available to them, the ones that are being released on Monday, and no guarantees that they'll get back here before December, the Minister's saying there. So should they get their pension cut off if they're out of the country for too long? The other thing is, what do you think of the new system, this waiting room lobby? Pātui mai, text me on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or email checkpoints@rnz.co.nz. Every weekday, teachers across Auckland are running hundreds of virtual lessons for the region's 250,000 school children. Today, our education correspondent John Gerritsen logged in to see what's happening.
Mori nei te whanau me timata tō tātou rā I te karakia, nō reira whakapiri o ringa, upoko ki raro, kāti o whatu me taku tātou. Takiuru, takiuru, takiuru.
At 20 to 9 this morning, Randwick Park school teacher Luanda Milo started the day for the school's bilingual class with a live morning karakia on Facebook. Year 6 pupil Waimarie Terona has tuned in for the karakia. She says she'll do some household chores and then some schoolwork, including an online class later in the morning.
We have one a day, they're all at 11. So at 11 o'clock I go on my phone, I press the link and then I see everyone. I mean, it's pretty normal. Like, I still get to see my teacher, see all my classmates.
At 10 o'clock, Rangitoto College teacher Olivia Newman is welcoming students into her virtual Year 9 English class.
Chris, did you have another lesson before this?
Yeah, we had maths.
Oh yeah, how was it?
It was good, yeah.
Good? Exciting? Not as
really
good as
exciting
English.
Maths. Yeah, not as good as English, yeah.
The students keep their cameras off and, for the most part, their microphones too, asking questions via messages.
Okay, I see Zara's put a question in the chat. I assume, Zara, your question is about number 1. Would Tolkien count?
But there are also opportunities to speak.
Okay, Daniela, number 3 for me, please. Why do you think so many authors use the structure of the hero's journey when writing stories?
Authors may use this structure because it clearly shows the character's development and it helps the reader follow along through their changes.
Lovely, exactly right.
For student Daniela Kisa, it's her second online class of the day, with one more to go.
Usually I have 2 to 3 per day. I had maths, then English, and then I have science. At the start, everyone was a lot more quiet than what they are now, and people are getting more comfortable with it.
At 11 a.m, James Cook High School teacher Aman Pillay is showing 2 Year 12 geography students a map of Auckland and talking them through what they need to know.
Georgia and Darshika, can you see the map of Auckland now on your screen?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So likewise, like I was saying earlier, it's so difficult for Auckland.
One of the teenagers, Georgia Priestley, says she doesn't have a lot of online classes. Most of her work is sent to her by email, and she's reasonably happy with how it's going.
Pretty good, actually. I find it easier to just focus on one assessment, and it's much easier than having to switch subjects 5 times in one day and kind of being stressed out.
It's closing in on lunchtime, and Albany primary school teacher Desiree Lagerwal's online class of Year 5s and 6s is a chessboard of children's faces on the screen. Most have their cameras on. She's using the session to ask questions and share a video.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you and we're going to watch a quick 2-minute video to give you some examples of prefixes. So you need to turn your volume up and then we will talk about it at the end afterwards.
Prefixes are
Year 6 student Emma Lim says she goes online once a day with the class and most of her schoolwork comes through a digital slideshow.
Paint is the base word.
My teacher makes an entire slideshow thing that we can edit. She makes one for everyone in our class, and there's different days and all of the work that needs to be done.
Emma says she likes the opportunity to see her classmates on her screen. Unfortunately, that's likely to be the only way they'll catch up for some time yet.
And that was education correspondent John Gerritsen. Kia ora e te iwi e haere aki nei I a checkpoint. We talked to the government's COVID business advisor about when and if New Zealand is opening up to the world. And you may need MIQ vouchers for a while yet, so we've got more on the new system that goes live on Monday. And we go live to Otarahanga for the latest on the search for a man and his 3 children. Homai o whakaro, send us your feedback on anything you've heard on the programme this evening. You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or email us checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Time for the headlines now. Ko Sarah anō tēnei.
Kia ora, Lisa. RNZ News headlines. Ko Sarah Thompson tōko ingoa. The mother of the 3 children missing with their father in coastal King Country since Saturday is holding out every hope that they are safe. She says in a message through police it is an incredibly difficult time for her and the wider family. Meanwhile, the family of Thomas Phillips fear they have been swept out to sea. A team from the Raglan Surf Lifesaving Club says using inflatable rescue boats and a jet ski they have searched the shore, including lagoons, on the 3rd day of the search. A Marakopa resident says the coast being searched is rugged with potentially treacherous seas. The government is still considering the travel bubble with Australia in totality rather than taking it on a state-by-state basis. COVID-19 Response Minister Chris Hipkins has told Checkpoint that it can't give anyone stuck in Australia reassurance they will be home by Christmas. He says travellers were told when the Trans-Tasman bubble opened there was a possibility it could be closed any time. The government is allowing red zone flights from Australia for people needing to return on an emergency basis, with returnees going into managed isolation. Bookings for MIQ will resume next week, with Mr Hipkins convinced the new system will be fairer than before it was paused due to the Delta outbreak. And Mr Hipkins says the situation in Auckland is looking encouraging, but he won't be preempting any cabinet discussions about stepping down alert levels. 14 new cases were reported today, all of which can be linked to known cases. And finally, the government's given itself a 5-month extension on its deadline to publish the emissions reduction plan, which will set out how New Zealand will meet its climate targets. Under the Zero Carbon Act, the final plan was due by the end of the year, but Climate Change Minister James Shaw says it will now be released by the end of May next year, in line with the 2022 budget. Mr Shaw says this means key organisation and communities can get through the worst of the COVID outbreak before having to turn their attention to the plan. Those are your headlines. Our next news and sport update is at 6.
Nā mihi Sarah, no mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Kei kōna a Nona Peltier, mina kaupapa kai Pākehī. Nona, let's talk about scammers and fraudsters. Hey, so they've really been busy over the first part of the year. What are the numbers and what are they up to?
Yeah, the Financial Markets Authority says it received 158 complaints over that period, and that was a 79% increase from the same period last year. They also issued 36 public warnings about this. And, you have to expect that there's a lot of scams and so on that are going under the radar. One of the areas where they are most concerned is social media scams, where people are using platforms to make contact with possible victims. And this is an interesting one, but I guess not a surprise. The romance investment hybrid scam, where, you're kind of lured by somebody, you get the trust, they build the trust with you, and then they give you some backstory, and later on you're transferring money overseas to, help them out. And then there's the imposter websites. This is where organizations use names and logos of familiar places, people, and so on to lure you in. So the FMA, that's the Financial Markets Authority, is saying, please be aware of this, take care, and if an investment opportunity seems too good to be true, it probably is.
And there's a consortium that's looking to build a waste energy plant in South Canterbury. What's their plan?
Yeah, look, this is an idea of it's a consortium of local and international businesses. It's called the South Island Resource Recovery Business. And they're looking to basically prevent 350,000 tons of rubbish from going into the landfill every year. And the idea would be that they would spend about $350 million to build this facility. They think it would create about 100 direct and indirect jobs and generate about 30 megawatts of electricity for the local network, which also could be then fed into the national grid. However, the proposal has not been well received by zero waste advocates who say the plant does nothing to reduce the amount of waste that is being produced, and that it's a misnomer to say it's a renewable source, because waste is not something that's renewable. It's something that people should be trying to reduce, not to generate to feed an electricity. So they don't say that is a renewable. So it will remain to be seen whether it gets past the resource consents that will be required. There will certainly be some community meetings about that.
So, Nona, let's take a quick trot around the markets.
Yes, look, our local index, the top 50 index, it fell just 9 points to 13,099, which is pretty good because Asian shares overall fell today because of some worrying weak Chinese economic data and just the overall worry about COVID and inflation and movements in interest rates and so forth. The New Zealand dollar, it's just a tad under 71 US cents. 96.9 Australian and 51.4 pence.
Thanks, Nona. Ka kite. That is Nona Peltier with our business news. As Auckland rolls into lockdown week 5, feeding the family is getting harder for some. A major food bank in Auckland says it's packed nearly 6,000 boxes of kai, with volunteers shocked by the number of people lining up for food. They say demand is well above last year's level 4 lockdown. Our reporter Nick Trubridge and cameraman Nick Monroe have the story.
You've seen the testing lines, you've heard of people patiently waiting for vaccines. But today we've come to a queue you don't see or hear about as often. Hundreds of cars snaking through an Otara car park outside a community food hub. These are families battling through yet another COVID-19 lockdown in Auckland. They make a booking, drive in, park up and wait for kai. The Otara Food Hub has distributed 6,000 parcels and counting this lockdown. That's well above the volumes experienced during level 4 lockdown in Auckland last year. It's approaching 12 p.m. here. I'm standing in the car park next to the food hub. About 200 people will move through here from lunchtime onwards, and some of them say lockdown's been a real struggle.
It's all about money. You know, especially us out this way in the south. You know, we have to pay rent, power, and plus it's winter and the power bill is very high.
Personally, will be financial problems. Yeah, especially those who are not essential workers.
Really difficult. Yeah, because like it could be like one adult that's the worker for the whole family, and now that person can't go to work.
Inside South Sea's food hub, Takavuni leads a team helping feed those driving by outside. He says the just under 6,000 food parcels packed far exceeds demand experienced during level 4 lockdown last year. Many who show up have lost work. Others can't work, with the kids now at home.
Man, it's been crazy. Just I don't think anyone was really expecting to go into level 4 and for this long. So we've had a lot of people, we could say that they were sort of prepared from last year, but I don't think anyone was really ready to go into it again and for this long.
The crew here are putting in 10 to 12 hour days, a little longer than their standard jobs back at level 1.
We've got a couple barbers in here, we've got some builders, some scaffolders, a couple singers, we've got teachers, we've got a mixture.
Sailors, but also some you may not necessarily expect.
We've had some donated goods come from McDonald's. Not the patties, but we've had the tomatoes and lettuce come through in bulk, so we're quite lucky, and some eggs as well.
Duan Fruin is packing onions, a bit of a shift from his standard days studying social work. This is his way of helping those battling the lockdown blues.
I have a few friends that's been isolated, and it's really tough on their mental health, being isolated from the world basically.
and missing loved ones and families. So, yeah.
Outside Meleno Huihuiuia, a builder in normal times is packing boxes for delivery for those who don't have a vehicle or have been forced to isolate at home.
By the amount of families that have been coming, you can see that everyone's struggling. Yeah, you can see it everywhere, especially with the lockdown hitting us unexpectedly. Yeah, everyone's struggling, not prepared.
It's now just after noon. The line outside is swelling, growing far larger than the testing centre queue across the car park. Cars start to trickle through. The boys are ready and waiting, filling boots with boxes. Some here say this is one of their only options to keep the family fed.
They've really helped a lot of families that are struggling now that there's the extra lockdown week. So these guys are like our last option for food, Kai. Yeah.
The lockdown struggle proving very real for some as Auckland starts week 5 at level 4.
And if you were listening to that on radio, you can check out that piece from our two Nicks. It'll be up on our Facebook page. It is 6:45. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. He Muriaki in Pita Pita Kōrero after the news at 6, working to get employees double vaxxed. With nearly 1,000 cases, 4 weeks of lockdown and a huge hit to the New Zealand economy, Delta has well and truly thrown the country a giant curveball. Last month, the government announced plans to reopen Aotearoa to the world by introducing a risk-based border from early next year. But with the biggest city in lockdown, what does the latest outbreak mean for that plan? I'm joined by Government COVID-19 Business Advisor Rob Fyfe. Hi, Rob. Is all hope lost that this plan to open up is going to go ahead as well as it was laid out?
No, I don't think what's happening now changes anything. If anything, it creates more urgency in my mind.
Does the government see it that way?
I think they do. Look, from a business perspective, and I think from the wider community, there are three dimensions that are just debilitating. Lockdowns are clearly very debilitating. The constraints in terms of people being able to come into the country and cross the border are very debilitating, and restrictions on gathering limits, actually, particularly for hospitality, are causing a lot of grief at the moment. We have to move forward and address and enable those three dimensions to be freed up for our economy and society to function, and that all comes to vaccine, right? It's the story is all about vaccine now.
Well, with those three things that you mentioned, crowd sizes, MIQ, lockdown, right? Let's start with lockdown. The government refuses to nominate a level of vaccinations in order to ease off lockdowns, right? We don't know the number. What do you think the level of vaccination needs to be where lockdown is not our first go-to tool?
Well, if you look at what's happening around the world, and that's the only proxy I've got at the moment, then what it looks like is 60 to 70% is not enough because we're seeing quite high levels of death in countries that have got that level of vaccination rate. So it says to me it's got to be something north of 80% of eligible people are vaccinated. It could even be higher than that. And I think that's entirely feasible for New Zealand. I've been thrilled to see how many people are stepping up for vaccine, but we need more. We need everyone that can to present themselves, and the faster the better.
Yeah, well, we're only at about, 34%, I think it was today, is the new figures, totally, of people who are fully vaccinated. And again, the government says everybody who wants to can be by December. So are you comfortable, would you be comfortable once the last day of December rolls around to say, you've had your chance, we're now moving to opening up New Zealand?
What I'd want and what I'd like to see is I would like to see more clarity around the target, and then I'd like to see us doing everything we need to do to get to that target. And if that means knocking on doors, if that means incentives, if that means being clever in terms of how we use social media to get to younger age groups, we need to be doing everything we can and throw the kitchen sink at getting to the vaccination level we need, whatever that number is. And I would like to see more clarity around that number.
So to put it bluntly, Rob, do you want the government to state what their vaccination goal is? Give us a number.
I think now where we're at, we're moving from the phase where we've had to, if you like, control the demand to now we need to stimulate the demand. And I would like to see a figure, and I'd like to see an ambitious figure for what the vaccine level needs to get to.
And when do you think they need to be upfront about that figure? When do we need the target by?
As soon as we start to see the demand declining, then we need targets, and we need to have everyone then doing everything they can to achieve that target. So I'd like to see that at some time in the next 2 to 3 weeks, realistically.
Is the home isolation pilot still going ahead, and is it going to be in that October-December timeframe as was first laid out?
As far as I know, it's still going ahead, as far as I know, and the timing is still in that window of October to December. Certainly, because of this outbreak, there has been a reallocation of resource to address the immediacy of some of those problems, but my understanding is that the home isolation trial is on track.
Have you managed to get on it, Rob?
I haven't, but what I do have is a flight booked offshore at the end of October to a board meeting I have to go to, and at this stage I have got no idea of when or how I'm getting home.
Do you reckon MPs should be allowed on that self-isolation trial?
I don't see any reason why they should be excluded. I mean, I think you want people that are highly motivated to prove that system can work, because I actually think when we move into 2022, I think isolation at home, both for people coming across the border and also people that test positive within the community, we have to learn how to use isolation at home, because MIQ is always going to have issues with supply and demand as we constantly discover every day at the moment.
Yeah, well, the Minister obviously announced today 3,000 new vouchers next week in a slightly revamped system. But outside of home isolation, do we need specific MIQ for lower risk double vaccinated people, like Ohakia Air Base or something?
So my view, when we get to next year and we have a highly vaccinated population here in New Zealand, I'm hopeful that will allow double vaccinated people to be able to come in to New Zealand and not required to isolate either at home or in a MIQ facility. I don't know what the demand side looks like at the moment as to whether there's a solution to the big queue that's sitting at the border at the moment, and whether there could be a one-off solution. But I mean, I lived at Ohakia for 3 years. There's plenty about Ohakia that's not suited to being an isolation facility. A lot of shared ablutions and those sorts of things that would make it very, very difficult.
Thanks for your time, Rob. That's Rob Fyfe, who is the Government COVID-19 Business Advisor. Businesses worried about ongoing lockdowns are being encouraged to get their staff vaccinated to prevent further lockdowns. COVID immunisations are progressing at a record rate, but with Delta circulating in the community, everyone's being urged to get their shot as soon as possible. Anei te kai reporter Anita Blake-Person.
The financial cost of lockdowns is staggering, but Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says the health cost of not doing them with so many unvaccinated New Zealanders could be catastrophic.
The vaccine is the best tool we have in our toolbox and our ticket to greater freedoms. The more people who are vaccinated, the fewer restrictions that you have to have.
The health sector has been the driving force behind vaccines up until now, but Ngāti Hine Health Trust Chief Executive Jeff Milner says businesses need to step up.
My heart breaks for the hospitality industry right across New Zealand, but whilst your businesses have closed, have you encouraged your casual employees, pick them up, taken them to a vaccination clinic, or even our larger businesses whilst we've been in lockdown, or have you adopted it's their decision to make? And I just think there's got to be a much greater collective and collaborative approach to getting everybody across the line.
Companies are trying a range of things to get staff to get their shots. For some, it's cash incentives or paid time off for the appointment. Jeff Milner says Ngāti Hine tried prizes at its Moiriwa vaccination clinic a few weeks ago.
We had a fixed period of time where we used those incentives for people who were at home doing it tough to come in and not only get vaccinated, which was the main kaupapa, but also have eligibility to get some food vouchers, which was gratefully received by that community.
But he's not convinced those sweeteners are what's required for mobilising the under 50 aged cohort.
For that period of time, for 2 weeks, it was appropriate. Our sole focus as Ngāti Hine Health Trust is now going out to reach the communities to take away the barriers that young people might perceive to be there.
On Friday, the Far North District Council is hosting a staff vaccination day. Chief People Officer Jill Coyle says teams will be at its Kaikohe offices to give the immunisations.
Currently, we've got about 65 registered. We did have more than that initially, but obviously there's been other opportunities now in the district for people to go and do it themselves.
COVID Response Minister Chris Hipkins wants businesses to encourage staff vaccinations.
One of the best things that they can do at this point is make sure that they have the time to go and be vaccinated and to fully support them in that decision. And we're seeing really, really good support from employers for people to do that.
He says the biggest incentive should be not wanting to get COVID-19 and protecting others, and has thrown down this challenge for all of us.
We have the capacity in the next couple of months to be one of the most vaccinated countries in the world against COVID-19. That relies on Kiwis coming forward to get their vaccines.
A plea for vaccinations to keep Aotearoa's health and economy in a safe state.
A fundraising initiative has been set up to address the digital divide affecting hundreds of Pacific students in Auckland, disrupted by the COVID-19 lockdown. Educational inequalities have arisen from a lack of devices and internet in the homes of many young people. RNZ Pacific reporter Alicia Foon spoke to those trying to make a difference.
Thousands of Pacific students are behind in their schooling due to barriers in accessing Wi-Fi and digital devices. But NZ Young IT Professional of the Year, Etero Lafaele, has created DigiTotua, a fundraising initiative to provide students in need with laptops. She says since last year's nationwide lockdown, there's been an ongoing need in Māori and Pasifika communities to provide students with devices so they can continue their education.
A laptop is $400 to $500. Rent is $400 to $500 a week too. So if you got to choose, oh man, it would be rent over a laptop.
DigiTotua's first focus is in South Auckland, in partnership with the Otara Kai village, where more than 700 students and counting have put their hands up to be the first recipients of these devices. In less than a week, her Give a Little page has raised nearly $40,000 with a goal of getting to $350,000. She says they've already handed out more than 30 laptops, but she hopes this signals to the government the urgent need which remains within some communities.
Give a bit of a wake-up call to the Ministry of Education as well. If you don't address this digital divide, I feel for our community that we'll end up missing out. In the long run, yeah, it's definitely going to hit our community hard because we're trying to encourage our Pasifika and Māori communities into technology. There's not many of us there, and how can we encourage when they don't have a very simple thing in tech, which is a laptop?
Data from the Ministry of Education estimated up to 8,000 Year 9 to 13 students this year were in need of a device. And before the Delta variant came to town, up to 80,000 households were without internet connection. Co-founder of People for the People, an organisation campaigning for digital equity in New Zealand, Julia Arnott Nene is also backing the cause.
It takes a village, this cannot be done by just one network and one group. It has to be a coordinated effort by a lot of different people who hold power in different ways and at different levels. And that's what we really hope for, and what I really hope for is to see that power and collaboration really coming to life in order to better serve our communities.
She says she's still waiting to hear back from government about supporting them to address the cause. Former principal of Aorere College in Mangere, Craig Pearce, who is now a principal at Orewa College, says it's a complex issue to do with poverty and social welfare.
Approximately 30% of the students in the senior school would have had access to a device at home and or a suitable place in which to work. A significant number of the houses in the area suffered from overcrowding. You couldn't guarantee that students had a safe, quiet place in which to learn, let alone have exclusive use of a device. What COVID has done, it's exposed those inequities throughout our communities and society.
Despite the government providing thousands of devices, there's concern hundreds of students are still being missed. The Ministry of Education declined an interview, but in a statement said it's distributed 10,000 laptops and Chromebooks since lockdown. Last year it gave out 36,000 devices, and it's helped 515 households begin the process of connecting to the internet.
So much feedback on the pensioners stranded in Australia when the bubble burst and the freeze went on MIQ, and they're at risk, some of them, of losing their pension payments. Kathy says, Pamela's story has made me weep. It is really unfair. Tom says, as someone working with beneficiaries, might I suggest that the New Zealand superannuitants in Queensland immediately email, phone MSD, their New Zealand MP and the Minister for Seniors, and of course the media. MSD has a lot of discretion, says Tom. Someone else says, the government facilitated travel to Australia, even encouraged it. Inability to return is entirely the government's fault. Definitely not kind. That's just a slogan. But this one says, we don't just have self-entitled young ones in Wanaka, we have self-entitled oldies in Australia as well. What moaners have New Zealanders turned into?
Ahiahi Mārie, RNZ News at 6, ko Sarah Thompson tōko ingoa. The government has made minor changes to managed isolation space allocation, which it says will make the system fairer. The MIQ scheme was temporarily halted because of the Delta outbreak, but rooms will be made available again from Monday under what the government calls a lobby system. About 4,000 rooms will be available each fortnight until Christmas, but the COVID-19 response minister Chris Hipkins says it won't be on a first-in, first-served basis.
If you join any time between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. New Zealand time, that will secure you an ability to participate in the process. Everybody who enters the lobby during that time will have an equal chance of getting an invitation to book.
Chris Hipkins says the lobby system is designed to stop bots and people using algorithms. 26,000 people were vaccinated against COVID-19 in Auckland yesterday, a day after the Prime Minister called for as many people as possible to come forward this week. The number puts the city on track to equal its second highest week of vaccination, about 180,000. Health correspondent Rowan Quinn reports.
The number's a good start, but it's still well short of the 31,000 the city has the daily capacity for. Jacinda Ardern says she wants 80% of eligible Aucklanders to have had at least one dose by Monday, so the number for the week would likely need to top 200,000. Vaccination buses will start going street to street in some areas tomorrow. More than 10,000 people were tested yesterday, well above the 7,000 a day authorities want as the city heads towards level 3.
Surf lifesaving teams have been searching a stretch of the rugged King Country coast today for the father and 3 children missing since Saturday. Surf lifesaving search and rescue manager Alan Mundy says crews travelled from Raglan and Bay of Plenty. He says lifeguards have searched river mouths, headlands and lagoons using an inflatable rescue boat and a jet ski.
We're looking for anything that could be that we could help put the picture together. So evidence, if we find the missing people, hey, that's great.
More surf lifesaving crews are travelling to the area tomorrow from Taranaki. Land searchers have also been combing the shore and coastal hills, but rain, blustery wind and low cloud prevented both police helicopters and the Coast Guard aircraft getting into the air today. The government has given itself a 5-month extension of the deadline for publishing the emissions reduction plan, which will set out how New Zealand will meet its climate targets. Under the Zero Carbon Act, the final plan was due by the end of the year, but Climate Change Minister James Shaw says it will now be released by the end of May next year, in line with the 2022 budget. That will require an amendment to the Zero Carbon Act, which sets out the timetable. Mr Shaw says this means key organisation and communities can get through the worst of the COVID outbreak before having to turn their attention to the plan. The National Party is urging the government to set up a $10 million mental health support package targeted at small businesses and their employees. The fund would be used in partnership with Business NZ, regional chambers of commerce and economic development agencies. National's mental health spokesperson Matt Ducey says small businesses find it harder to provide mental health support for themselves and their staff.
A lot of larger organisations can afford things like employee assistance programs, and that's for people to access mental health support and counselling. We know our small business owners can't afford programs like that.
Matt Ducey says owning a small business can be tough at the best of times, but even more so during the current alert level restrictions. Moving now into sports news, the Silver Ferns are still waiting to learn if 4 players will get exemptions to leave Auckland for next week's 3-test series against England in Christchurch. Captain Gina Crampton, Sulu Fitzpatrick, Peter Toiava and Grace Mweke are in level 4 lockdown in Auckland. Netball New Zealand has sought exemptions for them to travel but is still awaiting a response. The squad will assemble in Christchurch tomorrow. England got out of quarantine last week and have been training together since then. The first test is on Monday. The iconic Bathurst 1000 motor race will be held in December for the first time. Supercars has announced it will now be the final event of the revised season in the hope the fans will be able to attend. The race is normally held on the second Sunday of October. New Zealand's Shane van Gisbergen and his Australian co-driver Garth Tander won last year's race. An advisory group to the World Anti-Doping Agency is to review whether cannabis should remain a banned substance. The move comes after American sprinter Sha'Carri Richardson missed the Tokyo Olympics after testing positive for cannabis. Her suspension prompted calls for a review of anti-doping rules. And finally, reigning champions Chelsea have beaten Zenit St Petersburg 1-0 in their opening Champions League match, while Manchester United lost 2-1 to Swiss side Young Boys. And that's the news.
Tonight on Nights, journalist Amy Ferris-Rotman. In 2013, she set up Sahar Speaks, a project fostering female journalists in Afghanistan. How are they doing now? And Nina Minya-Powles talks about her new book, Small Bodies of Water, a collection of essays on the water that separates us, connects us, and which sometimes brings us a sense of belonging, and which you can win in this week's Hump Quiz on Nights of me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Te reo irirangi o Aotearoa, on air, online and on demand. Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Rapare Thursday. Northland, Auckland, Waikato and Coromandel. Occasional rain or showers, persistent and heavy at times tomorrow, with thunderstorms from the afternoon. For Waitomo to Manawatu, including Bay of Plenty in the central high country, also for Gisborne. Periods of rain, heavy for a time tomorrow. Southeasterly gales in Taranaki tomorrow. For Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, scattered rain becoming widespread and heavy tomorrow. Horowhenua, Kapiti and Wellington, a few showers today, rain tomorrow and southeasterlies rising to gales in exposed places. Nelson, Buller, Westland and Fiordland, fine apart from a few showers about southern and eastern Fiordland tomorrow. Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago and Southland will be fine tonight, but a few showers near the south coast. Cloud and showers spreading north tomorrow and snow lowering to 600 metres inland. And for the Chatham Islands, fine spells and a few light showers. That concludes the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Rapare Thursday. It's 6 minutes past 6.
Kia ora rā, Sarah. No mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint. Ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Bad weather along the rugged Waikato west coast has hampered a sea search for a missing King Country man and his 3 young children, missing since the weekend. Thomas Phillips and his 3 children, Jada, Maverick and Ember, aged 8, 6 and 5, have not been seen since a family gathering on Saturday. Their car was found on the remote Kiritehere beach on Sunday. Wind, rain and low cloud today prevented the Coast Guard and police helicopter from getting into the air to search. But ground searches of bush and the beach have continued today. Well, joining us now from outside the police station in Otarahanga is our reporter, Jake McKee. Jake, no press conference from the police today, but what more do we know about the search for the family?
Kia ora, Lisa. Well, this afternoon we did hear that some lifeguards have gone out to do a shoreline search. There's about 20 that will head out. The head of Surf Life Saving New Zealand did confirm to me that this team is from Raglan, but we will see teams from New Plymouth and the eastern region. They are ready to go if they are required. Their role ultimately depends on what the police decide will happen with the search. Today that was only a brief search, but they could head out again tomorrow to do more. It just depends on those weather conditions. Now down at down at the site, it's not good conditions. There is no reception. It's really quiet out there. When we visited today, it was pretty much just us, a couple of other media and the police teams, and a few of the surf lifeguards had showed up out on the beach. No sign of any search and rescue that had happened because the rain and the wind have blown away any of those footprints or vehicle tracks that had made any stint, and with the lots of waves crashing in on all those rocks facing out into sea.
And there's a temporary rahui, is there, at the beach?
Yes, signs have gone up for a temporary rahui, which went in place yesterday, advising people that there should be no fishing or other water activities for the time being. It said it went up for yesterday. It does actually say it's for an unspecified event, but it is dated for an event that was September 14th, Tuesday.
And so what are Thomas's family saying?
Well, we've heard from the mother and the mother of the children and his family itself today. His family, we spoke to his uncle Paul earlier today. They say this is out of character. There was no signs of any of this. You know, they didn't think this behaviour, no signs that something like this would happen. There was no indication that they would be going out in the bush, but they're hoping that he is just with his children camping somewhere safely in the bush. But as I said, no sign of that. We have heard from the children's mother for the first time. She is saying that she hopes the children are safe and that she has every hope out for them, and that for her this is a very difficult time.
And what is the weather forecast looking like for tomorrow?
It's not looking too much better, which could hamper those search efforts. Surf is still going to be up a little bit. We're looking at some swells down at the beach there of about 1.7. Rain still in the morning, and some forecasts saying there could even be some thunder and hail in the afternoon, which, planes couldn't get up today, and that's not looking better for them tomorrow.
Thanks, Jake. That's Jake McKee, who was joining us live from outside the police station there in Otarahanga. The wait is over for Kiwis abroad, well, at least some of them. From next week, stranded travellers will once again be able to try their chances at coming home. The government stopped opening up rooms in MIQ following the Delta outbreak, meaning only those in emergencies could apply for a spot. COVID-19 Response Minister Chris Hipkins has confirmed the pause will end on Monday morning. 3,000 rooms will be released over the September to December period in a new online lottery system.
It's not a first in, first served model. So if you join any time between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. New Zealand time, that will secure you an ability to participate in the process. Everybody who enters the lobby during that time will have an equal chance of getting an invitation to book. People will be held in the lobby until the room release begins. Then people will be automatically and randomly moved into a queue. When they get to the front of the queue, they'll be gradually allowed through the website in order to secure a room. There's no need to refresh the website regularly anymore. There's no limit on the number of people that can enter the lobby, thus registering that they are trying to secure a room. Once all the rooms have been taken, all of the available rooms that have been taken, the lobby will be closed. Anybody who is left in the queue or left in the lobby will be informed that the bookings have been completed for the day.
New rooms will be released on a fortnightly basis, about 4,000 at a time. There's one group of Kiwis excluded from the arrangement for now, and that's those in Australia.
However, we are planning another voucher release in September, which we do expect people in Australia to be able to access. We'll be able to confirm that when a decision on the Trans-Tasman bubble, which we're expecting to be able to make in the next week, when we make that decision, we will signal the availability of red flights for people coming from Australia.
And people overseas who need to travel urgently can still apply for an emergency spot in MIQ. A lot of you have been getting in touch about our earlier story about pensioners who were stranded in Australia after the bubble went awry. Some have no sympathy. This one from Maureen. People going to Oz knew they were likely to get stuck there potentially for months. The government warned them. No use moaning now, says Maureen. Another listener says it was clearly stated, flyer beware. However, I think MSD should be flexible on the superannuation. Another person says it's hard to stomach this lack of kindness. Adrian says listening to over 65's plight in Australia, their national super should continue to be paid. It's an entitlement, and where they are is irrelevant. Let's hope that MSD gets sensible and removes unnecessary stress. Thomas says those pensioners stranded in New Zealand, those stranded New Zealanders should not have their pensions stopped. Harsh behaviour of the government and government departments, especially MSD, appalls me at times, says Thomas. Another person says it's unfair to penalise people who want to return to New Zealand and are depending on superannuation and benefits at this time. It's not their fault they can't get back. And Sue says, I'm horrified that pensioners may have their pensions cut and have to pay back some of it because they're stuck in Australia due to the pandemic. Surely these strange times demand a bit of give and take and Jacinda kindness, says Sue. Thanks for your feedback. Do keep it coming. It is 14 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoints on RNZ National. Some churches are insisting no law will stop them praying the gay away. The Justice Select Committee today heard submissions on the Conversion Practices Prohibition legislation bill. The proposed legislation would criminalise treatment that aims to change people's sexual orientation and gender identity, despite that change being impossible. Here's political reporter Katie Scotcher.
Conversion therapy has been proven around the world to cause serious harm, and the government wants to ban it here, with a bill currently before Select Committee. But Andrew Moon from the New Zealand Good Neighbour Church says that won't stop them from doing everything they can to prevent people from living non-heteronormative lives.
If any of our children try to take hormone blockers, we are going to stop them. And if they want to live with LGBT identities, we will do everything we can do to get them to change their mind. Of course, not in a violent or abusive or coercive way. We're not going to take that action.
Alan, a representative of the Auckland Light of Grace Church, says there's no need to ban the harmful practice.
We think there are people in the rainbow community who need and will seek conversion service at their own will. In that case, the service needs to be made available for those people. And people who do not believe in that practice have the right not to use that practice.
The proposed bill covers religious groups, but the Justice Minister has said they will still be able to freely express their beliefs. The New Zealand Christian Network's National Director, Stuart Lang, says while the group wants to prevent harm, the proposed bill is worrying.
Our concern is that, as worded, the bill could unjustifiably and perhaps unintendedly constrict legitimate and non-harmful religious practices, especially the appropriate and time-honoured exercise of respectful pastoral counselling, advice and prayer. In our view, the state should keep out of that realm.
Alex from the Clinton Presbyterian Church Youth Group told the committee he has grave concerns about the proposed ban.
This bill creates so much uncertainty for people like myself. What can we say? What can't we say? Is Big Brother watching? Are we going to be prosecuted one day? Am I going to get in trouble for suggesting anti-pornography therapy for a young person who's struggling with that issue? Again, they might say that's an expression of their sexual orientation.
Jay Bean from the Church of Confessing Anglicans Aotearoa wants to protect vulnerable people, but says the bill's definition of conversion therapy needs to be tightened.
There's such a broad scope with the way the legislation is currently worded that it perhaps prohibits things which we would want to allow in terms of conversation and advice and prayer in those kind of ways.
Today's submitters represent just a fraction of the people who contacted the Justice Select Committee about the proposed ban. A record number of people sent in written submissions, more than 100,000.
In Afghanistan, women still don't know if the Taliban will allow them to work, and cabin staff of the national airline now say they fear for their safety. The airline says it's waiting for new guidance from the Taliban. Some of the crew have been speaking to the BBC's Lise Doucette.
Somewhere in Kabul, down a back alley, swiftly up the stairs. We've come to this abandoned house, which is now a safe house, where 11 remarkable Afghan women are now in hiding. Female cabin crew of Ariana Afghan Airways, the national carrier, awaiting rules from their new Taliban bosses.
I have no hope. We see what is happening to bright, educated working women. We don't have physical security or peace of mind. We don't dare wear our uniforms.
They filmed from their homes when Taliban came to some streets. Listen to the screams next door. Some cabin crew decided they'd be safer together. In this film, they marshalled their memories, their country's oldest, largest airline. They became its new face, new progress.
Those were happy days. We have such good memories. I may never have a photo like that again.
Tamana's last flight, just after the Taliban swept into Kabul. Panic at the airport. The flight never took off.
I've never seen anything like that, not even in the movies. Even those scheduled to work on that flight didn't show up because they were scared. I found the courage to work because I love my job.
Their lives, the stuff of history. A flight cancelled the day before Kabul fell. It was meant to fly a delegation to peace talks. Then the women were told, don't come to work. Some women have started working at Kabul airport, but these cabin crew doubt they can ever return to the jobs they loved. They gave their all. Now they fear it puts them at risk of losing it all.
With thousands of kids locked down, you may be sporting a bit more fridge art than usual, but let's be honest, some of it can be a bit, well, Picasso or Dali-esque. The odd wonky face, animals with extra bits, or a personal favourite, the stick figure with a twist. Now, what if those childhood imaginings could kind of be brought to life? Well, that's what UK dad Tom Curtis has been doing using computer wizardry, transforming his son's quirky art using Photoshop, putting some flesh on a two-legged giraffe, human teeth on a cat, and side faces on a few creatures. Now it's gone global with hundreds of thousands of people following Things I Have Drawn on Instagram. Tom Curtis explains how the idea first struck him.
I saw a drawing once of my little boy Dom, who was about 5 at the time, I think, and I saw that he'd put two eyes and a smiley mouth on the same side of its face, and I thought, does he really think it looks like that? As any dad or mum would do, probably thought this is a nice thing to put on the fridge. But actually, I thought, no, maybe this is something we could do something more with, and maybe it's the kids, he, Dom, in this case, that thought it really does look like. And actually, maybe he's right. Maybe he's right, and it's us adults that have got it wrong. And I kind of thought, well, maybe we can create a world where the kids' drawings the kids' drawings are real, and it's us adults that have got everything wrong. That was the kind of idea behind it.
And so how do you bring them to life, these drawings from the kids? And how long does it take you?
So I do it in Photoshop. There's not a huge amount of real-life magic in there, unfortunately, and they take about probably 10 to 15 hours. It's quite a long process. Some people think it's some kind of machine learning, but it's not. It's just Photoshop.
Where do you get your best photo from? What is the age of the child that delivers you the best drawings to work with?
Yeah, so I think probably between 5 and 7. That's when they're really kind of naive, but they've got kind of good form, and you can tell what they're drawing. They'll have definitely a trunk on the elephant, and they'll definitely have big ears or whatever it might be. Dom and Al, my 2 boys, are now 12 and 10, so they're a little bit too old to be contributing, but we get sent so many different pictures from around the world, so that's fine.
Now, I'm not taking the mickey when I look at these. These have brought me great joy, but I just want to bring a couple to your attention. I believe this image is you here. Is this you? You've got some interesting characteristics, which, how would I describe this to people who are listening rather than watching? Kind of pig-like, would you say was fair?
Well, thank you. Yes, I mean the nostrils do look kind of like they're facing towards us. So yes, it is indeed me. Yeah, I'm quite an easy subject because I can easily take photographs of myself. My wife Becky will never let me do a photograph with her.
The other things that I really like is when some of the animals have very human characteristics, a la this cat, which seems to have a set of human dentures.
Yes, that's also true. They're also my teeth. Because again, Dominic drew those teeth, and I thought, well, they do look very much like human teeth. And it was very easy for me just to open my mouth, take a photograph, and use my own.
And then Photoshop them into said cat.
Photoshop them into the cat, exactly. But I had to remove a few. So to be clear, I haven't got those big gaps in my teeth like the cat has. I'm
slightly concerned about this next person who sort of, well, he has the appearance of what kind of work? A phallus. This person here, who's just looking at this. Do you look at some of these pictures from the kids and think, what were you thinking?
Well, yeah. You know what? To be honest with that one, I'm not actually even sure what he was drawing. That's one of the joys of it. In fact, Alistair sometimes gets annoyed with me for picking up or even delving into the waste paper bin to find things that he's drawn and screwed up and thrown away, because I still think there's something quite good in them, particularly when he's put a big cross across it, and I'll try and do something with it.
Donald Trump is another one of my favourites. He kind of appears in the child's drawing to be something like what I would imagine a little green alien would be. I mean, what approach did you take in translating that into your computer-generated image?
Well, yes. So there is a little bit of ET in Donald Trump in this one, so which is why we nicknamed him DT. Actually, we created quite a few different images out of that particular picture, and we got all of our followers on Instagram to guess what we would do next. So yeah, we can get quite a lot of mileage out of one picture.
I did get a lot of joy looking at these. We're in lockdown here at the moment, right? In Auckland in particular, you can basically, you stay home. That's what you do all day. So these have absolutely delighted me, and I'm wondering, from your point of view, what do you get out of doing them?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think for me, I've been doing it for about 5 years now. And originally it was all just a little bit of fun. I found it quite therapeutic, if I'm honest, creating these images. But now the thing that really spurs me on is seeing all these pictures that we get from other kids around the world, or rather from their parents. If we are managing to encourage kids to be creative, then that's a really good thing, I think. Because I think a lot of kids have got too many other distractions these days, and I think it's good to get them to put pen to paper. So that's really the thing that I get out of it, knowing that people like it and that people are encouraging their kids to draw.
Tom, have you ever got anything from New Zealand? Have you ever had a Kiwi or anything like that you've transformed?
You know what? It's a good. We certainly have had pictures sent from New Zealand, but we've never done a Kiwi. So maybe we should do a Kiwi at some point.
And that was Tom Curtis. Sounds like a bit of a challenge, actually. His Instagram is Things I Have Drawn, website by the same name. Let's see if we can encourage him to draw a kiwi or bring one to life from a child's drawing. Things I Have Drawn. Check it out. Everyone loves some leftovers, especially some big bears in Alaska who have been munching into a huge feast of leftover veggies. Their surplus from the Alaskan State Fair, 450 kilograms worth, dished up to the bears in a tradition that dates back more than a decade. CNN's Lauren Maxwell reports.
This crowd at the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center in Portage is rushing to see one thing: the arrival of giant veggies left over from the state fair and the brown bears that will happily devour them.
We've been doing this for over a decade.
Conservation Center Director Trish Baker calls it a natural partnership.
The Alaska State Fair, of course, has all these fabulous vegetables that farmers have grown and competed with. And at the end of the fair, there's a lot of vegetables.
It's considered an enrichment activity for the bears and an exciting addition to their regular diet.
Great message, eat your veggies.
If you're quiet, you can even hear them softly munching on the greens. Today's drop-off of locally grown produce was somewhere between 800 and 1,000 pounds.
The big zucchini was in there.
Also on the menu, cauliflower and cabbages, laid low by the center's 3 brown bears.
It's fun to see them like this, enjoying the food, and get to see it from a safe distance.
2 of the bears, 17-year-old Patron and JB, are brother and sister. And just like many siblings, they don't always like to share.
They've got one thing on their mind right now, and that's putting on weight.
Today's activity was certainly a crowd pleaser for the people and the bears.
The bears don't get to attend the Alaska State Fair, but there's a portion of the Alaska State Fair that comes to them.
Only in Alaska, where big bears chow down on big veggies, a meal compliments of the Alaska State Fair.
Before we head off, some more of your feedback on the pensioners stuck in Australia and at risk of getting their super cut off. This person says the government's being unkind and unfair to super annuitants to cut off super if they can't get back through the MIQ system. It's broken and the lobby system proposed still looks unfair. Mark reckons it's absolutely ludicrous that pensioners validly trying to return to New Zealand get their pensions docked, particularly if they have stood back to allow others to take places on Mercy flights. Where is the kindness, says Mark. Another person says no sympathy, they knew the risks of COVID-19. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi Pōpō from tomorrow at 5 a.m. First up asks what is actually essential in lockdown. Why can Aucklanders get a box of donuts and a bottle of gin, but not a book or a bunch of flowers?
Kia ora tātou, RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Ko Sarah Thompson tōko ingoa. Auckland is on target to reach about 180,000 COVID-19 vaccinations this week, following a call from the Prime Minister for as many people as possible to get their jabs. Kiwi pensioners in Australia are at risk of having their superannuation payments suspended after getting stuck when the Trans-Tasman bubble burst. Surf lifesavers have been brought in to help search for the father and 3 children missing since Saturday, and a new political poll taken during lockdown shows support for Labour has steadied after a downward trend. Those are your headlines. Our next news update is at 7.
Country Life keeps you up with food trends from the orchard.
I think horticulture is what I call the new dairy. We're going to see a massive development of blueberries.
To the bush.
Well, it's a tonga, it's a Māori, the old kawa, so... But, yeah, it's good doing something with it.
Can you talk and pick?
Oh, yeah, we can. Yeah. Hey, bro. Yeah.
Country Life, food for the soul. Friday nights at 9 and Saturday morning at 7 on RNZ National.
And I'm Brian Crump, getting ready for another night on RNZ National. My first guest after the news at 7 is Nina Minya-Poles. She is a writer who spent a fair bit of time in New Zealand, although that's not where she's from originally. And she's written a book about water, bodies of water, and how, well, in New Zealand, if you're tangata whenua, you'll talk about your connection with the land. You might talk about your manga that you associate yourself with, the mountain you associate yourself with, the awa, the river you associate yourself with, the iwi, the people you associate yourself with. Well, Nina, to some extent, is interested in the body of water that she can't stand on, because you can't, but which she has a strong sense of belonging